Hashem, today's daf yomi is Makkos daf of Gimel Makkos 23, and today's daf is dedicated for Shemir for the Chayalim, that's all for the Shuyim, and the Yeshua for Am Yisrael. And this Eis Tzara, the daf yomi is going to start on top of Chav Gimel Amid Aleph, and the Gemara starts by asking the question, my time Mishum Nikla. Now, this is a question we're not sure what it really is referring to. It's not in everyone's gear, so it seems like the Rivan and Tosos didn't have it. So, what's it going on? The most I'm going to be discussing all of the lashes. What's the method in which the person gets lashes? Because, in a way, in order to embarrass him. And what's the reason why, if he defecates or urinates or she urinates, that the lashes stop? Because then they've been embarrassed. How do we know that a strap that you use to hold the whip, that it has to come from a calf? So he says it's because based upon the pasuk, it says Arba'im Yakin, and give him 40 lashes. The Samachel, right next to that, it says well Tachsom Shor Bedisho. Right next to that, it says do not muzzle your ox. So since we have the two verses next to each other, we know that they're connected. Amar Rav Sheshes Mishum Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. Rav Sheshes taught. So once we have Rav Sheshes and the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, we have several teachings. First of all, now that I'm wondering about this, how is Rav Sheshes quoting directly from Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah? He wasn't his student. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was a Tana. Rav Sheshes was an Amora, but it must be that he had a tradition from it. So it says Rav Sheshes, the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Minayel Yavama. So a woman who falls to Yibam, her husband Rahman al died, and she has to do Yibam with her husband's brother. Shenafel if named Mukashlin, but her husband's brother is Mukashlin. He's filled with these boils over his body. Shein Chosminota. We don't muzzle her up, meaning to say that if she says, "I don't want to marry him," we don't. Rivan says, "A megaranba." We don't rebuke her that she shouldn't say, "I don't want to do this." Rashi and Yevamo says we don't force her to do the yibum, and we allow her to do the chalitza. And what's the source for this? So it says, "Do not muzzle the animal." Next to it is the mitzvah of yibum. Amar Rav Sheishes. Good morning, Hobbs. Good morning, good morning. Amar Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes also taught in the name of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, called Mavazes HaMoadim, that this whoever is not respectful to the Moadim, really it's talking about Chol HaMoed specifically. We're in the first wide line on 23a, Hobbs. Mavazes HaMoadim, Ki'ilu Oved Avodah Zarah. One who is Mavaz in the Moadim, it's like they're worshiping idolatry. What's the source for this idea? Because it says, it says in the pasuk, you're not allowed to make idolatry. And right next to that is so we see that there's a connection between the two. Amar Sheshes Mishum Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah call Mesaper Lashon Hara, and call Mekaba Lashon Hara. Meir Edu Sheker, whoever tells Lashon Hara or receives Lashon Hara, or whoever he says over false testimony, Roy Lashlichol Klavim. It's appropriate, commentaries say, after he dies, that his body should be tossed to the dogs. Because it says, about nevela, that if you have a carcass, it's not kosher, toss it to the dogs. And next to that, it says, you're not allowed to swear falsely. Kari Bay, Nami Losasi. You read it not as Losisa, but you don't cause others to hear you saying the false thing, meaning to say, don't tell them Lashon Hara. So we see from here that it's compared to the dogs. If one engages in Lashon Hara, that person's body is worthy to be thrown to the dogs, meaning to say, we don't treat him with dignity. He's worthy to not be treated with dignity because the person who is speaking Lashon Hara is not respecting the dignity of others. We stay rutzuos, and then we talked about the fact that the Chazan Knesset, the person who's in charge of enforcing the judgment, he has a whip that there's a part in the middle which is made out of calf hide, and then on either side is a donkey skin to be used as a strap. And Tana Shel Chamor is from a donkey. Why? Because Galilo, like there was a Galilean, he expounded in front of Rav Chisda. Why do we use a donkey whip? Yada Shor Koneu, because an ox, it says in Isaiah, the ox knows its master, v'chamor yavus bo'av, and donkey knows the trough of its owner. But Yisrael lo yada amilu ispanim. But the Jewish people don't know God. Amar Hakadosh Baruch Hu yavo mi shemakir avus bo'av. Let the one who knows its owner, knows its owner's trough, the donkey v'yifra mi she'enu makir avus bo'av, and let him exact the punishment from the one who does not understand the trough of its owner. Yada. Tefach. So the calf, the whip is the part he holds is one tefach long and one tefach wide. Amar Abaye Shema Mina Kochav Echad L'Pum. And then we say it extends from the back to the middle of the belly. So says Abaye Shema Mina Kochav Echad L'Pum Gabei Avdinamai. So everybody gets their own strap. So Amar Rabba Imkein Nafesh L'Ritzuos Tuva. So Rabba says, well, then we're going to have an enormous amount of straps. If everybody's getting their own strap. Ela marava avakta islay. Kibai miktarbe, kibai mirapebe. No, there's basically adjustable. It's an avakta, which means that there's a way to adjust it. And if you want to, you can make it longer. If you need to, you can make it shorter so that it hits them in the right place. So then we give him the lashes while he's on the incline. Malkin also. What's the source for this idea that you're supposed to strike him in this manner? This teaches us you hit him once on the front and two on the back. Malkin also. While he's on an incline or he's leaning. Minani Mili, what's the source? Amarav Kahana Damakravi Pila Shofet Viko Lefanav Kidei Rishato. Oh, I just read that. I'm just reading again. A Malkin also Amarav Chisda Amarav Yochanan. So it said in the Mishnah that. Well, we strike him always on the incline. How do we know that the strap has to be doubled? How do we know that the strap needs to be doubled? Shenemar v'pilu. It says so it says v'pilu, and that we read it as v'chpilu. It's doubled. But don't we need that to teach us that he's on an incline? No, imking. We learn from here both things. When he strikes him with one hand, with all of his strength. Who are these people whose job it is to whip the people? So when we appoint them, the chazanin, we appoint these people chastire koach. We don't want them to be too strong, but v'yisire mada. But we need them to be very smart, so they know how to do it. Rabbi Yehuda Omer afil chastire mada v'yisire koach. Rabbi Yehuda says no, they can even be not so smart and have a lot of strength because they'll know not to do extra. Amar Rabba Kavasi to Rabbi Yehuda mistabra. Rabbi Yehuda is logical to accept well Yosef. It says in the pasuk that you're not allowed to add on pen Yosef. Now, if you want to say he's not so smart, I know that's why we need to warn him. But you have to say he's very smart. Do you need to warn him? He already knows it. The Rabbanan say, "Ein mizarzin ela mizares." No, the Rabbanan say the reason why we encourage him to do it the right way is because he's very eager to do it. He knows how to do it, but we want to teach him. We want to remind him. Remind the busy person how to do his job because the busy person can get it done. Tana kashu magbia, when he lifts it up, magbia b'shteyadav, he lifts it up with two hands. Ukashu makeh, but when he strikes, makeh b'yadu achas. But he strikes him with one hand, so that it basically comes down more forcefully, and so meaning to say with his full strength. And while he's doing this, the person who's standing next to the chazan is reading the verses from the Torah that relate to lashes. And this is the procedure. The biggest judge or the most senior korei he is reading the verses. Hasheni Mona, the second one counts the number of lashes. Vashlishi Omer, and the third judge says, Hiko, strike him. Bisman Shemakim Meruba, when there are a lot of lashes, Marich, then he has to go read slowly. Bisman Shemakim Muletas, where there are not that many lashes, Mekater, he reads quickly. Gemara says, but that can't be Vanan Tanan, Chozer Utchilas Amikra. So don't we say you go back to the beginning of the verse to read? So the Gemara says, mitzvah something. No, it's ideally you're supposed to get it precisely at the same amount. The load tzimtzim, if you don't get it finishing the lashes with the verses, then then you go back to the beginning. Tan Rabbanan Maka Rabba. It says in the pasuk, Al Ela Maka Rabba. So you have to give a severe lash. I only know that you're not allowed to add on if he's getting the full amount of lashes. Let's say it's a makam uetes. Let's say if Rayvan says it's not the full amount. How do I know you're still not allowed to add on to this? Tamomer lo yosif. Now I'd add on. Him came out tamomer makaraba. So why did it say makaraba? We made our Rishono Shem Makaraba. So it's teaching us that so it's teaching us about the Rishonos that that is what's considered a Makaraba. Meaning to say that he has to give them with his full force. That's how Rivan understands it. Niskalka, let's say he had an accident while he was being whipped, or she had an accident, then they're immediately stop the lashes because they've been embarrassed. So the Brisa says, what kind of accident? So Meir says, both for a man and woman, it has to be any fecal accident. Rabbi Yehuda says the man is a fecal accident, and the woman if it's a urine accident. The Chachamim disagree. They said either type, even if it's for both of them, if it's a urine accident. Amar says, Vatanya, Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Then we learn, Rabbi Yehuda says in the Brisa, Rabbi Yehuda says, both the man and the women with fecal accident. But in our Brisa here, it says that Rabbi Yehuda says the man with fecal and the woman with urine. So Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Shneim Shaven B'Rei. No, in the second Brisa, he's saying that both of them, also the woman, she will also go get exempted from more lashes if she has the fecal accident like the man. But in addition to that, she's done with just a urine. Amar Shmuel Kaftu Viratz Mibayis. Let's say they tied him up at Viratz Mibayis, and then he escaped somehow and he ran away. Potter, he doesn't get more lashes because he went through the shame of being tied up. Meisvei, but the Gemara says we have a contradictory source. Koa, Bein Barishona, Bein B'Shnia, Potrin. Let's say it says in the Brisa, let's say he got embarrassed because he had this accident. And whether it was with the first smack or after the second smack, he's automatically exempt from more. But Nifsika Ritzua, but let's say the whip broke Bishnia by the second one, Potrin or so, because he's been embarrassed at that point because he's already been struck once. But Rishona ain't Potrin or so. But if it broke when he lifted it up the first time to smack him, then good morning. If it lifted up to smack him, then we exempt him. But the first one we don't. Amai, why don't we smack him? Why don't we say Lave Karatz? Why don't we say it's like somebody who ran away from the Bezdin? He escaped, so he should have been embarrassed. And Gemara says, no, Hasam Ratz, Achol Ratz. The act of running away is what caused him to be embarrassed. Not Rabbanan, Amdula Kashe Yoka Kawa Pochuno. So if they evaluate him and they say, listen, once you give him the lashes right away after the first one, he's immediately going to, if they evaluate him, that if they're going to give him lashes, immediately he's going to get an accident, he's going to have an accident, we immediately exempt him from more lashes. Why? Because it says Pen Yosef Vinicler, Ivan explains. That we don't give him a lashes, which will immediately cause him to get embarrassed. But if they evaluated him that he will not um, have the accident until that he won't get embarrassed or have the accident until after the lashes, then we could give him the lashes. So, but if we say mi bezdin kola malkin so, then we could give him the lashes. Whoa, not only that, I feel kola betchila malkin so, meaning let's say he has an accident in his pants before he even gets one set of lashes, then we will give him the lashes. As it says, the cove in Nikla. Only once you strike him will he get, if he gets embarrassed, that's sufficient. Not that he was already embarrassed in the court. Morning, Jeff. Morning. We're at the Mishnah on the bottom of 23a. By the way, I want to say to you, enjoy the Makkos while you can. Enjoy the lashes because Shavuos is a significantly greater challenge than the Makkos, in my opinion. Why is it harder? I just find it harder to relate to because this is much more concrete, so we can more readily understand what we're talking about as opposed to the type of oaths that a person makes. It's a little bit like Nadarim. I mean, it's a lot like Nadarim, like vows. Do you remember Nadarim? We did it like maybe 2 years ago. So so you remember how a lot of it didn't was hard for us to relate to because we don't really deal in that world today. We don't usually make oaths and vows in that manner. So it's a little bit hard, but it's not rocket science, and we'll be able to overtake it. It's much more beautiful than rocket science. Okay, so now we're up to the next Mishnah. Kol chayve krisos shalaku. Anybody who did a sin which was liable for kares, and then they got the lashes, niftaru yidei krisusa. As a result of their lashes, they are now exempt from kares. Their punishment in heaven is wiped away. As it says, "V'nikla achicha le'einecha." Your brother will become embarrassed in your eyes. Kishalaka, once he gets the lashes, hareu ka'achicha. He's like your brother. That's the position. Divrei Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel. V'amar Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel. And then he continues, says, "Ma over avera achas no tal nafsho. Just like if somebody violates one sin, he's going to lose his life. For kares, ha'osa mitzvah achas, one who does one mitzvah, achas kama v'kama shetinasa nafsho. How much more so you'll give him a life? Rabbi Shimon Omer, mimakomo hu ame. No, you don't need a kavachomer. You learn out from the verse itself, as it says, v'nechrasa nefashos haosos. All these people who sin with the adultery penalties that are listed at the end of Acharei Mos, they get kares. V'omer, and it says, we're on the top of 23b, asher yaseh odam b'chai b'hem. And if you do the mitzvos, you'll live with them. Hakol ayoshe v'lo avra avera. So whoever sits and passively does not violate a sin, no sin was char kosim. So we give him the reward as though he did the mitzvah. What a tremendous schus. Rabbi Shimon bar Rabbi Omer Harei Omer Rach Hazak B'Altiach Sadam. I'll give you another proof for this. It says, just be strong, don't eat the blood. Ki adam o nefesh, because the blood is the soul. Umayim adam shenafsho shel adam katzav imenu. Just like if blood, which a person is disgusted by. If you hold back from it, that you receive reward. Imagine you go home and you say to someone in your home, look, you just did a huge mitzvah. You didn't eat the blood of this animal. And you're like, okay, no big deal. But look how much reward you get. What about robbery and adultery? A person has a desire for some of these things. And he desires an operation man, one who doesn't do that. How much more so will he merit in all his future generations till the end of time? Now this is one of the most famous lines in the whole Mishnah. He says, God wanted to give reward to the Jewish people. Torah mitzvahs. Therefore, he increased for them many mitzvahs, so that they should receive reward for withholding from a sin. It says Hashem chafetz aman tiko yagdil Torah v'yadir. We see Leah is here today. Leah is the yortzeit for her father, blessed memory. We'll study in his memory. Let's just remember his name. Leah, what is his name? Gershon Yisrael ben Chaim. We study in his memory and merit of all the beautiful Torah that and good deeds that his family does. I remember being able to study with multiple generations of Gershon Yisrael's children. What a merit to be able to study in his memory this morning. The Rambam says, Hashem therefore God gave us many Torah mitzvahs. So I want to find this source from the Rambam. Rambam says God made us many Torah mitzvahs. Let me see if I can find it. I can't find it here, but he says that if you do one mitzvah with perfection, that is the ideal. Then that you're going to have a share in the world to come. So we'll see. What you have that there? Read it. Read it.
Of these moments of property and complete devotion to God. This mitzvah must be performed without being incorporated in any personal interest in the observance of the
If you fulfill one mitzvah properly, completely in devotion to God, then you have the share in the world to come. So you have to do one mitzvah. If you're able to do one mitzvah completely properly, what is chus that you'll get? You become a specialist in that mitzvah. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Chalukin alav chaver of Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel. The chaver argued to Rabbi Chananya ben Gamliel. Amar Rabbi bar Ava, Amar Beirav, Taninin, because we learned that we already know that they argued because we have a Mishnah Megillah. What does the Mishnah Megillah said? Aim bein Shabbos Yom Kippurim. El shezez zedono b'dei adam. It says zedono b'ikares. Meaning, say Reb Chananya ben Gamliel said that if you have lashes, you're exempted from kares. So, and then comes along Rabbi Yochanan and says the rabbis argue with it. They say you're not. So then the Gemara says we already know this idea that the rabbis argue because we learned in the Mishnah Megillah that there's no difference between Shabbos and Yom Kippur, but shezez zedono b'dei adam, it says zedono b'ikares. That on Shabbos you get punishment by man, and on Yom Kippur you get punishment from kares. Vim Isa, and if it's correct that they would agree, idi v'idi b'dei adam, you could get lashes and be exempt from both. So therefore, it proves they argue. So Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Omer Hamani no Rabbi Yitzchak. You know who is the one who is the Mishnah in Megillah? That's Rabbi Yitzchak who says Makkos b'chayve krisus leiko. He says that you don't get lashes by a Torah's penalty. The Tanya Rabbi Yitzchak Omer chayve krisus beklal hayu, because there's a general prohibition against kares at the end of when it talks about the arayos. The Lama Yatas Kares Bachosa. So why is it repeated by his sister? About Kares, we already had this already in our tractate a couple of times. But Duno Bakares over Makkos. To say you get Kares and not Makkos. Rav Ashi gives a different answer. I feel Tamer Rabbanan. You could even say that the Mishnah Megillah is the Rabbanan. Zeikar Zedono B'dei Adam. Zeikar Zedono B'dei Shemayim. Because says what's the difference between Shabbos and Yom Kippur? One, the main penalty is Shabbos is from man, and by Yom Kippur the main penalty is from heaven. The law is like Reb Chananya ben Gamliel. So the Gemara says, Amar Yosef. What do you mean the law is like Reb Chananya ben Gamliel? That if you get lashes, all of a sudden you're exempt from the kares penalty. Does anybody go up to heaven and find out that that's how they ruled? That when that if you get lashes, you're exempt from kares? So Abaye says, what's your problem now? Hadam Rabbi Shubin Levi, Shalosh Dvar Masu Bezin Shamata, Veskimu Bezin Shamal Al Yadam. That which Abaye said, that which Rabbi Shubin Levi taught, three things the heavenly court said above, and the earthly court said, and the Bezin above agreed. Al Yadam Mansal Kleilav Asa. How do Rabbi Shubin Levi know? See, I was thinking about this. I want to ask my friend after we get on. Actually, Rabbi Shubin Levi, the Gemara in Ksubah says that he did go to the Garden of Eden. So he did go. I'll see. I'll ask my friend, see if he has an answer. Ella cry kardarshinan. So how did they know? They had a pasuk they darshan did. Tachinami kra kardarshinan. They didn't go up to heaven, but they had a pasuk to prove that that's how heaven paskin. So Guf Amar B'Shubin Levi Shloshut Dvar Masu Bezin Shamata Eskimu Bezin Shamata. There are three things that the Bezin Shamata did below, and the heavenly court above agreed. Al Yadam. Anyway, and these are three things. Mikra Megillah, She'ela Shalom, B'Shem, Vavos Meiser. The mitzvah of reading the Megillah, the mitzvah of She'ela Shalom, of that when you greet somebody, you're allowed to greet them with the name of God, and the bringing of Meiser. The Rivan has the explanation. The first explanation is that you give it. They used to have to give it to the Levites, but then Ezra was disappointed. The Levites didn't return, so he said, "Give it to the Kohen." Mikra Megillah Kimu v'kibu Yehudim, that the Jews accepted it and they upheld it and they accepted it. Kimu Amala, but it means it was accepted above Masha Kibu Amata, that which was accepted below. Sheila Shalom, how do you know you ought to agree with the name of God? Boaz, Bami Beis Lachem. Boaz came from Bethlehem. Vayomer Lakotzrim, Hashem Imachem, and he said to the harvester, God is with you. Omer Hashem Imcha Gibor Achayil, and it says, God is with you, mighty warrior. My Vomer, why does it say it twice? Boaz you might have thought Boaz did it on his own. And you might have thought that the heaven didn't agree. Tashma, Omer Hashem Imcha Gibor Achayil. So he responds, God is with you, mighty. God is with you, mighty warrior. Okay, so then the Gemara says, and what about the Meiser? Avos Meiser. D'chsev Eviu is called Meiser al Beis HaOtzer. Ha'yiteref bebeisi v'chanuni nabazos. It says in Malachi they brought all the Meiser to the storage house, and he tested me also in this. Amar Hashem tzivakos. Im lo aftach lochem et harubat hashamayim marukoti lochem bracha abudai. So God promises He's going to give you blessings ad buidai. What does it mean ad buidai? Amar bar Rav ashi bos v'sifso sechan l'omardai. Till your lips get weary from saying enough. I have enough. I have so much enough. Amar Belazar begimel makomos v'fia ruach hakodesh v'beis dino shel Shem u'beis dino shel Shmuel Ramatu u'beis dino shel Shlomo. There are three places in where the divine inspiration appeared in the court of Shem, in the court of Shmuel Ramati, in the court of Shlomo. Beis dino shel Shem. How do you know that divine inspiration appeared in the court of Shem? Because it says, Vayakar Yehuda, Vayomer Tzad coming many. Judah recognized when Tamar produced the signet ring, he said, she's more righteous than me. Minayada, how did Judah know? Maybe, how did he know that she got pregnant from him and that she was an adulteress? Maybe the same way he went to her, another person also went to her. Maybe somebody else went to her. So a heavenly voice went out and said me, many Yatsu Kavushim. These hidden things came out from me. But Beis Dino Shel Shmuel, how do we know in the court of Shmuel that the heavenly court agreed? They'll say, V'nini anu bi neged Hashem v'neged Mishicho eshor mi lakachti. Hayomer lo ashaftanu v'lo ritzosanu. Meaning to say, Shmuel said, I promise I didn't take any brides. I didn't take anybody's ox. And they said, yeah, we know you're not corrupt. Vayomer, and then he said, Eida Hashem ve'ei mishicho. And God is a witness, and His anointed one is a witness. So kilometzasim biyadim uma. Vayomer Eid. Why does it say? And he said he's a witness. Vayomru. It should say Vayomer Vayomru. Me by the way, to say they said. So Yatzabas called V'amra Ani Eid b'davar zeh. God, a heavenly voice went out and said, I am the witness in this manner. And Beis Dino Shel Shlomo, how about where does it appear in the court of Solomon? The king responded, he says, Tenua Sayelad Achai V'amei Slo Temisu. This is the baby where Solomon says, give the baby to give the baby to the woman who said, let the baby live and don't kill him. He emo, she is the mother. Minayada, how do you know she's the mother? Maybe this woman was just doing a trick. So the heavenly voice went out and said, she is the mother. How do you know that all of this is a proof that the divine inspiration was siding with them? Dilma Yehuda, Kirin Dechashiv, Yarchi Viyomi. How do you know? Maybe Judah, he counted the days and the months, this Rami, and he knew that was his visit. And the Chazina Mechaskinan, Lo Chasinan, Lo Maskinan. And that which he saw, he knew he was able to establish as the chazaka, meaning to say he was the one who was there. Why? Maybe he just didn't assume that there would be anybody else there. And Shmuel Nami, Kul Yisrael Karu B'Lashon Yechidi, and also Shmuel also he said could be referring to God because to all of Israel because all of Israel could be referring to in the singular. They'll say Yisrael no Hashem. The people as collective could be referred to in the singular. And Shlomo Nami midahaka merachamta v'ol merachamta. Maybe Solomon sided with the woman who said, "No, don't kill the baby, let her have it." Maybe it's because he noticed in her the compassion. And so therefore the Gemara says, El Gemara, it's not divine inspiration, we have a tradition. We can't prove from the verses, it's a tradition that it's divine inspiration. You had a question, Jeff? Right, so that's what they're saying. Maybe it was the wisdom. Yeah, but then the point is that the heavenly court, we said we wanted to prove that the heavenly court agreed with that. So then they say, no, we can't prove it from the verse of tradition. Darash Rabbi Simlai. Rabbi Simlai taught, Sheish Me'el Shlosh Esrei Mitzvos Never Lo Moshe. There were 613 commandments that were said to Moses. This is the only source in the Talmud for the idea that there are 613 commandments. Shlosh Me'el Shishim Echamesh Lav, and there are 365 prohibitions, Minyan Yimosacham, like the days of the sun. Says the Rivan, every day you're told not to do something, you have to know not to violate every day. 248 positive, Adam, corresponding to the limbs of a man, so the limbs of a person. And the Rivan says every limb is shouting out, do a mitzvah with me, do a mitzvah with me. Amarav Amnuna Maikra, what's the pasuk? Torah Tzivalonu Moshe Morasha. The Torah, Moshe commanded us Morasha. Torah, that is the gematria of Shis Me'avachad, 611. And the first two of the 10 commandments, I am Hashem your God, and shall have no other gods, that he heard directly from, that we heard directly from God. Okay, so we'll stop here. Shkoyach.